Welcome to the Neighborhoods Community Activator Salon #1. We just finished private welcomes and introductions. I'm facilitating and I'm joined here by Siddharth Sthalekar, the founder of Neighborhoods, and I think our guiding light. Hi, Sid.
Hello.
I'll introduce myself first, and then I'll call people who raise their hands to do personal intros, which are optional. Hey, I'm Greg. I'm from Pennsylvania. I live in Cobb County, which is Metro Atlanta, USA. My background is mainly in philosophy, the arts, and media production. I've had a second life since about 2014 in organizational development and community development. And I write a lot of open source dialogues on inclusive organizing, emphasizing low tech approaches to developing communities, but also allowing for digital tools to develop deeply inclusive culture and communities. I've been in a bunch of related projects since 2014, including Inspiral, Value Flows, Library of the Commons, Collaborative Technology Alliance, Permaculture CoLab, and I've been a community manager for Neighborhoods since March 2022. Neighborhoods is practically my personal dream project for developing a deeply distributed digital networking technology. So I am very happy to be here, and our Neighborhoods website, I'll put that link in the chat window, we have a white paper, an FAQ, social media links, and our Discord invite, which I'd love for more people to use. Let me put that in the chat, and I'm very happy to see some new as well as familiar faces here. Dave, you have your hand up. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Been a pretty good day today. Let's see. Background in 2 minutes. We'll give the. I didn't think this.
There's no hard time limit. Yeah.
All right. So we'll start with my bachelor's degree is in music education. I decided, for reasons, not to actually go into it. I love the teaching, but discovered there's a lot of politics involved. So we'll sum it up with that way. So I ended up going to computers. That's been most of my professional career. Lately, I'm doing some care work. Just my experience in professionally, in life in general, has drawn me towards neighborhoods, in neighborhoods like projects, Holochain and Holo. Been following Holo since pre-ICO, was that 2017 or something like that, maybe. But somewhere around there. So I've been following it for a while and kind of been floating around here and there and touch base with several people. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm very drawn to neighborhoods for the potential for organizing groups that I'm a part of, that I want to develop. We homeschool our children, and so there's a lot of organizing already that's been happening for a few years in the homeschool communities, locally, statewide, nationally, internationally, lots of different stuff. So I'm intrigued to kind of see how it's organized through like Facebook groups and how that might transition, and see all sorts of potential for improvements through hopefully what we can see come out of neighborhoods. So and other things as well, but I think that feels like a good spot to leave it for now.
Thank you, Dave. Are we just popcorning?
Popcorning is fine. If if people want to.
Yeah, Luciano.
Yeah, I thought I'd go next. Hi, my name's Luciano. I'm known on here as Crumble Turner. My background has been in communities, analog communities rather than digital ones. I was involved in the early days of a permaculture village known as Crystal Waters here in Queensland. I've also had various incarnations in different business roles. The last 12 years has been in renewable energy, particularly in solar farm development. And I've been following the fantastic developments in crypto and more specifically the last few years, Holochain and Neighbourhoods. I'm a good friend of Tom Miller, who's part of the team. And we were both involved a few years back, about 5 years ago now, in a project called Life Bubbles, which was an intentional community growing some food and cohabitating here on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. We have recently established a new venture called Hydroverse. Hydroverse is our community that we want to put into neighbourhoods as a space, collaborative space for people involved in the green hydrogen industry, which is, you know, a white hot global phenomenon now. There's so much attention and resources and funding going into this space as we move towards hopefully a cleaner, greener and fairer world. Hydroverse has recently also been picked up by a business incubator. So we're going through a phase of fundraising and developing a platform which we want to build on, you know, distributed ledger technologies, using the Holochain tools and resources. And we're looking to collaborate with anybody who's got any interest or any tech or any desire to help drive this process. Our point of focus in the industry is going to be around reputational rating. So although this market, the green hydrogen industry is exploding, there's no agreed to global standards for certification of green hydrogen yet. So we think this is a great space for us to move into. And rather than just focus on traditional certification, you know, ISO 5000 or IEC standards that are traditionally used, using a reputational rating to bolster that certification process and allowing companies to demonstrate their commitments and, you know, how much money, how many resources, what they do to help create an environment that is decentralized and peer-to-peer reviewed to enhance their reputation and to build an industry that's not business as usual, like we've seen in, you know, rorting of carbon markets or water, the sale of water rights that get sold again and again and again, you know, supply chains all around the world. So yeah, we're really excited about, you know, hopping into this space with you guys and creating a hydroverse where people can plunge into green hydrogen. Thanks.
That sounds like a really excellent example of a potential future neighborhood and probably real future neighborhood. Thank you, Luciano. Anita, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name's Anita Halcyon, and I knew Arthur Brock in the early 2000s when he had the Dream Team Technologies in Denver, Colorado. And so I was working with him I was an executive director of a time bank in Denver. And so we were using Dream Team to help build our online ability to exchange. So it was a wonderful, fun collaboration. And I've always been excited and drawn to see what wonderful thing that Arthur's doing next. And kind of lost track of him over the years, but in 2018, I felt really drawn to look at his Facebook page and saw what was going on with Holochain and went, oh, well, this is super interesting. So became a Holo host and have been following along, and I'm not a technical person, so I'm one of the I need it to be easy to understand kind of person. So worked on a glossary that's on the Holo host forum that's a beginner's glossary that kind of translates some of the wording a little bit. And been working with Jamie on Holochain Activist Community Circle on Hilo, and have a couple of other irons in the fire. And it's just really want to learn here. I've really, this just is very interesting project, and some of the wording is a little bit beyond me, so I'm just trying to understand. So I'm going to be listening very hard today. So thank you very much. You have a wonderful project.
Thank you. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you. Mariette?
Hi. So when I heard of a dream team, which I didn't know about, I figured I would go because I am an artist and a photographer and a very autodidact kind of individual when it comes to things like philosophy and systems design and all of these things. And I'm currently working on a project called Dream Tree. So a little bit different, which is developing a gamified app that is about making a wish, to be quite honest, helping people make a wish, a prayer, or whatever you might want to look at it, and finding a way that that wish graphically and magically starts to find its way into regenerative projects that are actually happening around the world. As an artist, I have a very strong sense that some of the tools and the things that we've been creating or that people have been creating in these spaces are still really hard for the average person to access, not because of intellect, not because of anything more than like attention and possibility and the things that are poetic. So those are the things that really bring me here and have brought me into these spaces for several years. And I think I'm complete. So nice to be here with you all today, this evening.
Thanks, Mariette.
Thank
Welcome.
you. I think Tom got in, thankfully.
Yeah, thanks,
Hello,
guys.
Tom.
Very exciting.
Great. Hi, Tom. We're doing personal intros. Steve, are you ready to go?
If I successfully unmuted, I am. All right, can
I
you hear
can
me?
hear you. Yep.
All righty, so yeah, I don't have a camera on this computer, guys. I like to type on my laptop and then look at I can't see anything closer than about 3 feet in any detail, so I put you guys all on my big screen, but then you can't see me. So I am kind of coming back into, community design, virtual communities design after about 20 years when I've been in urban planning up until the pandemic. In fact, I am developing a methodology, which is a much better way to develop neighborhoods, where I essentially get rid of the entire concept of a building. So, and I'm looking for a CEO to actually launch that company. But in the meanwhile, I decided to get back into working on internet related stuff. I actually wrote the first, as far as I know, modern paper on liquid democracy. So I kind of came back into this, kind of designing a follow-up to that, and I've been writing a series of white papers, which I kind of consider in total to be a sort of an aspirational package for the internet. And I'm kind of getting involved in a few projects, but mostly I'm just writing these white papers. So that's about it for me.
Thank you, Steve. And as I mentioned, Steve and I know each other through Collaborative Technology Alliance. It's good to see. Well, it's good to hear you here today. Thanks. And Jamie, it's good to see you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Lower my hand. So my name is Jamie Klinger. I've been interested in decentralized and distributed technologies since I was either 12 or 13, using Napster with about 2 gigabytes of music shared throughout the entire network. I don't even know how I stumbled upon such a thing now that I look back, but I've been, finding myself through peer-to-peer technologies ever since. And these where we are at with DLTs is the natural evolution of such. So it only makes sense that I find myself here as well. And I fell into Holochain specifically, before when it was Scepter, and when Eric Bear, just through pure happenstance of fortune, ended up couch surfing at my cooperative. So I went back to New York State on a trip with him and a few others, and met Art and met Eric and learned about everything they were doing, and it was 110% in line with what I was doing, which was called JOTU. It's the Jack of all trades universe. And the concept is that it generates points when people do things that benefit the community. So a credit system instead of a debt system, and credit's only generated when you go and clean up a park collectively. So not one-to-one, but one-to-many. So people would value it because they can see the actual value being generated physically in the world. So I've been working to try and get that rolling for a while, and for one reason or another, I've struggled quite a bit. And when Holochain, when I saw that Holochain was moving forward in the way that it was, it seemed like the perfect fit. I would rather integrate, an element of JOTU, and have all of the other layers already built by people who are much more talented than I am on a network of friends who are already, encompassing a good share of the values that the people who would want to use JOTU would already, be beholden of. So I said, I'll put JOTU on hold, and I'll spend my time talking about Holochain, talking about meta currency, which I'm a massive fan of. And so I've done presentations, and right now I'm trying to put together a little bit of like Holochain Explained. I'm not the Twitter Holochain Explained. I'm glad for what they do, but I want to start kind of being the techno hippie where I have a good technical understanding, but I also have a good layman way of explaining things. So I really want to be able to work on reading these complex articles that are really digging in deep into the tech, and then translate them, for the average person a little bit more, so they can understand, because when they look at me, they're like, oh my God, you really are excited about this. You're really passionate about it. So they want to know, they want to understand. And I want to explain it because I see what Holochain can do, and I see what Neighbourhoods can do. And it's world changing. So I'm very happy to be a part of it, and I'm very happy to be with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your presence and excitement and your desire to make things accessible. Wonderful. Anybody else want to do personal introductions?
Tom's got his hand up.
Yes, he does. Hi, Tom.
Hi,
You
everyone.
have
Yeah. Thanks for that, Greg. I'm just excited for this meeting to happen because I just sort of feel like this is now sort of like an anchor point where, people from all walks of life can sort of plant their foot in the ground, learn about these new collaboration tools that are sitting on Holochain, and make really robust plans. And, I see the next sort of 12 months as sort of trying to sort things out and sort of get Neighbourhoods get to a point where it's got some sort of a marketplace and some sort of processes in place, and got a really robust sort of meeting Salon room like this. But yeah, personally, I've been involved in Holochain for years, and have helped run the Holochain community developer courses, and I just look at all the other technology, and I just don't see things as robust as what Holochain have created. And so I've just been for years telling people about it, and just excited that the team have got to the point where it's almost production now. And so this is like I see this as the next big push, and not a crypto thing, just a push of kind of integrity and accountability, which will make us all trust each other more. And so I'm excited for what's possible in these Neighbourhoods, and I just think it's also a beautiful name that can explain what we're trying to do. So it just all feels right to me. So that's where I'm at. So I'm here to help be a community activator and help other community activators be community activators.
Thanks, Tom.
Sid, does somebody in particular get credit for the name Neighborhoods?
I'm not sure. I think like there's been a bunch of conversations that kind of led to it. Yeah. I don't know if we can credit anyone in particular, but
Well, I think maybe it's better if it's a collective wisdom emerging. Yeah.
It took a village to come up with the name Neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sisian,
Hmm.
good to see you.
Hi. Yeah. I think I first heard about Sacred Capital from Sid when I was still living in Singapore some 3 years back. And I think it was through him that I understood like Holochain. And I was really drawn to the idea because I was at a point in my journey where I was considering like multiple forms of capital. I was really excited about the idea of like seeing how values could flow and be reflected in communities. Yeah, so I'm really happy to be here to see how like to really understand and to see the tools that comes out of Holochain and neighborhoods. Because like I think following Holochain for 3 years, I'm still not able to fully communicate or explain what it's about as much as I'm like really excited about the systems. Yeah. So just really happy to be here.
Very cool to see you. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Can I go?
Likewise.
Should I go?
I think that would be great.
Hello everyone, I'm Sid. I think I know quite a few people here in these rooms. I'm just really excited about the salon. Greg came up with this idea a few weeks ago, and we've been holding back from holding salons like this for community activators because we haven't wanted to get ahead of ourselves, but it felt like, it's coming to be the right time and to gradually seed conversations like these. So I guess the intent is to also grow the community activators as a community, as a neighborhood in itself. And so trying to do it as gradually as possible without too much of a splash. And so I really cherish the people who have showed up here today, because it's like, I think you guys have really sniffed this out and, could say are really aligned with what is about to happen. So I'm excited to share this space with you all and also use these spaces to share what's coming over the horizon for us, so that y'all can start vibing and aligning with what's coming, and likewise, if something feels misaligned or something's missing, to receive that feedback and to actually start those channels of communication. So that's my secret hope here, and hope these gatherings really blossom. In terms of introduction, I'm really excited about Neighbourhoods because I think it solves like a very interesting problem of being embedded in your own identity and culture, but it not coming at the cost of global coordination, or like, or in the past, or at least, based on my history, I've had this tension between, or do I participate in economic prosperity, or do I hang on to my identity and culture? And I think Neighbourhoods allows us to not go beyond those dilemmas. I bring forth new patterns of social coordination, and that I guess we'll talk more about that, so I won't go on too long. But that's about me. Should I anyone who's left? Paul, perhaps? I think.
Sure, I'm going to say hello. Hi everyone, my name is Paul Seals. Thanks for Tom for extending the invitation for the call this morning. I'm based in Gold Coast in Australia, and I've known Tom for about 10 years. Had intuitively felt connected and drawn to Holochain for some reason, although as an investment point of view, it hasn't been performing as well as I'd like. But I've got a project that I'm sort of sitting on as well called Conscious Coin and that sort of thing, and I've just been dealing with a lot. I'm very much about, I've got a background as a privacy advocate, and I was in the US end of last year, and I've got to speak to a lot of the community in places like Utah, and some of the states, I was talking about decentralized now. So particularly sort of what we're dealing with in the world, and just encouraging anything that sort of revolves around decentralization. So I'm excited to be here and connected in, and I'd support anyone that's in the conversation for creation for what's impossible, rather than we all know what's not working and what the problems are for the world. But yeah, lending my energy and attention and support towards the conversation for what's possible and for creation. That's me. And I'm driving at the moment, so I'll just listen in.
Thank you, Paul. Welcome.
Cheers.
All right. Thank you. Zoe, is your microphone set up now? If you'd like to introduce yourself, you have the floor.
Hi everyone. I'm Zoe. I'm in Philadelphia. Right now, I'm a doctor student, and I'm broadly concerned about the role of technology and labor. So I study video gaming, and I helped design the game last year about the care work and how to promote care work and use some the new like cryptocurrency to promote the idea of care work and how we quantitatively evaluate the previously devalued the care work. So, and I heard from this event from one of my friends, and she was in like the European time zone and she couldn't join. So I'm trying to get more information from your project. Thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, the recording should be available to her later. Also, in the future, we'll try to do things that are more conducive to participation by Europeans and Africans, because yeah, that's the world has a certain time zone set up where you kind of got to pick and choose for one particular meeting, which time zones it'll be most accessible for. I think everybody introduced themselves, and thank you so much for that. I'm glad we had time to do that because that's a big part of our sense-making journey. Oh, Sid's child hasn't introduced themselves, I don't think, but
I think she's fine.
yeah. All right.
We don't want to spend 45 minutes with her introducing herself, but
okay. Well, now, let me provide a little bit of a neighborhoods overview and some news, and Sid will help me out, I believe. I'd prefer if people say feedback for the end of this bit. General overview is that neighborhoods, number one, we're building modular software tools on Holochain for creating and organizing all sorts of communities. We're focused on social sense making, but it is definitely a very expansive mission. Why are we building on Holochain? Well, I prepared to talk about this a bit, mainly because I didn't know who'd show up. Most of you are familiar with Holochain, but to go over it a bit, we believe that Holochain illustrates the future of distributed computing to serve teams and networks of many different sizes more fairly and efficiently than blockchain or centralized servers. Holochain's based on individual agency, shared rules, and mutual sovereignty, which I think means basically any people who are using Holochain together in a specific interaction, they have peer-to-peer equal responsibility for the use of the Holochain software. Holochain is approaching stable release status at a pretty good rate, I think, and we expect it to make lots of waves within, I'd say, the next several months. And there are lots of great online Holochain resources, but I have to single out one, certainly. I'm going to put the link in the chat. Some of you probably have read it. Hold on a second. So there's an essay series called Uninclosable Carriers and the Future of Communication, co-authored by Arthur Brock, co-founder of Holochain, along with Eric Harris Brown. And I think that series honestly should be just about required reading for literally anybody who is very interested in the future of digital technology. I really do. And I understate more often than I exaggerate. So please check it out if you haven't. It's very accessible, very in-depth. And yeah, I hope people check that out for themselves. About neighborhoods, we're building social sense maker concepts, a sense maker app, and technical standards to make it easy for people and groups to bundle together small holochain applications and to pair them with tags, reactions, ratings, and reputation systems chosen to fit your group's culture and purpose. It's important to note neighborhoods as a project, we don't want to build all, maybe not even most of the neighborhoods compliant, neighborhoods compatible applications. What we want to do is help develop and establish a standard which other holochain developers can and will use to develop a thriving ecosystem and marketplace of social sense-making applications. And why are we doing this? In a nutshell, and this is very much me, but I think everybody in neighborhoods would agree with it. Centralized systems and corporations extract value by exploiting communities. And I don't mean that in a harsh way. I mean it in a very matter-of-fact way regarding how the global economy has come to operate, how the digital systems and marketplaces operate. It's, I think, the sea that we swim in together. Corporations extract value by selling, sometimes overpriced, software and services, by selling advertisements, of course, and also often by selling our personal data with or without our permission. Now, we need to realize that software development, support, and customer service are real work, hard work, which should be fairly compensated. But centralized platforms are carefully and craftily built to capture and to exploit communities. Decentralized systems and progressive decentralization can help us to develop decentralized economic justice, including fair compensation for labor. Some neighborhoods news. We just finished our social sense-making essay series and articulating our cultural and technical design philosophy. And we have a fairly new PDF version of that, slightly updated. I'll put that in the chat window. That just came out about a week ago. Thanks especially to the primary authors, Pavlo Ruana, Emmeline Friedman, and Jean Russell. Neighborhoods has been in heavy software development mode for several months now. We refactored our software into the development of the core social sense maker app and the concurrent development of example small applications, widgets, or applets, which can perform the precise community sense-making functions that people actually want, and then can be easily linked to each other through the SenseMaker application. So here's kind of what that might look like. A social SenseMaker app will show you which neighborhoods you belong to, as well as any public neighborhoods which you don't belong to. And then we'll show you how to join each neighborhood if you want, and how to add any neighborhoods compatible applications which that neighborhood uses. So the SenseMaker app, to do that, will probably include a dashboard, a news feed, notifications, and a search bar, something like that. But you can all help us to figure that out together, not just today, but in the months ahead. Meanwhile, we're concurrently developing the little apps that can perform specific functions. And as those develop, our compatibility standard will develop, and that will change the way that the SenseMaker app itself develops. In the long term, we will probably develop and release some of the key neighborhoods compatible apps in addition to the SenseMaker app, but we need to attract a strong community of developers and projects to develop compatible apps, and also when they're interested to adapt existing projects to become neighborhoods compliant. And that's obviously going to require lots of deep dialogue. Thankfully, Neighborhoods has had close ties to Holochain and its community since just about the beginning. In the short term, Neighborhoods will do a lightning talk and a 2-hour workshop at DWeb Camp, August 24th to 28th in Camp Navarro, California. Information is available through our website, or email us or join Discord. Sid, would you like to add anything or some hints maybe about stuff that's coming over the horizon? You're still muted, Sid.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks for laying the foundations so well, Greg. I guess for people here, like, it could be a relevant conversation, like what is a community activator, what is Neighborhoods really going to enable, how can y'all help, how can we benefit from your help, like all of that could be a discussion, and I just wanted to open the gates for that. I will say broadly, I think the community activator role is for someone who is interested in developing a formal reputation system for a community or micro network. And that's a key differentiation we make, like the formalization of culture. And so Neighborhoods tools aren't for communities that benefit from, certain organicness or informalness. Like, we're not trying to create, a formalized community for your friends. Like, that doesn't make sense, because I think humans are actually pretty good at smaller groups of 50 to 100 or 150 even. But if you're thinking about groups that go beyond 500 into the thousands, gathering or clustering around a certain culture, I think the problems in the past are if you don't have fundraising skills, or if you don't have dev skills, you've really felt trapped and limited. And so Neighborhoods help solve some of those problems by creating protocols and infrastructure which will allow you to spin up these communities with generic widgets really easily. So in that sense, it's new territory. It's speaking to a new class of people that we think have this latent need that's waiting to be tapped. We think there will be early adopters. I think, such as yourselves, who've shown some amount of resonance with what we're building and have shown up here. But yeah, it's new territory in the sense, for a lot of people, they haven't really thought this way. They haven't done this before. And I think we will make a lot of mistakes in formalizing culture and formalizing reputation. And so it would be nice to have conversations like these which help anchor this design process, which help people coming in, which have honest conversations about, oh, this really blew up in my face. I created this peer-to-peer lending experiment, and it completely fell apart, and for us to piece together why it did. And so from these conversations, moving towards cultural templates or cultural libraries. So later down the line, we're thinking about a design lab, or an R&D lab that will help formalize, coalesce these conversations, create some kind of collective intelligence, and then we'll be able to spin out like cultural templates that communities could just pop into, their networks and get rolling. So if you just want to create a community of memers, you don't have to start from scratch. Like, Tom and Sisian could have been doing this for the last 2 years, and so you're just forking their cultural template and you get rolling. So potentially, I think the output of conversations and groups like this, I'm thinking, a year or 2 years down the line, would be just a rich, robust library of cultural templates that people could pop in and start borrowing and learning from. And yeah, who knows, cultural hackathons, design sessions, all of that is something we intend to seed, and with your feedback we could give shape to them. Yeah, that's the purpose of conversations like this that I hope to participate in more. But maybe it's a good time for any thoughts or questions that are coming up for people on which direction we could take today's chat in.
Yeah, feel free to raise your hand or even just jump in if you have anything right now.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I do want to note, we've had a native currency, NHT, since our community offering in December. The purpose of NHT will be to fund and fuel fair transactions in the NH app marketplace, which we're gradually developing. I don't think we need to dwell on that in this meeting with a community activator focus, but Sid, if you want to say anything about NHT, it's available on MEXC and on Sushi Swap. And of course, if you join our Discord server or follow any of our platforms, you can find out more about that too.
Yeah, the intention with some of the currency design is to activate this marketplace for generic widgets. So when community activators such as yourselves want generic tools, and by generic tools I mean little bits of software that don't impose constraints and cultural norms on you, but instead are, in service to the community, and can just be bolted into your community membrane. The currency design enables a marketplace for community activators and communities to reward and provide livelihoods to applet developers or widget developers who are creating these generic tools. And so you could imagine communities where, we're just sharing memes with each other. And so you use this very generic meme tool to share funny content, and might be around a specific sense of humor. But you then also decide, you'd like a little chat window streaming in your neighborhood. And so you can actually pick up potentially a little chat widget from the marketplace. You might then decide you like playing Space Invaders with each other. You might then decide you trust each other enough to, spawn a little couch surfing clone within your community. You might then decide to also start engaging in resource sharing or commercial transactions with each other. And so all of that just coalesces within the same community membrane. And so the economic system allows you to reward developers for creating that for you. And because we're using Holochain, this kind of micro accounting is possible. So potentially, community members could be paying a cent or a fraction of a cent, and that aggregates and rewards the end developer who's just created a simple widgets that's used potentially by millions of people. So that's sort of the direction we're heading. And so, which is why we say neighborhoods are about generic tech and specific culture, as compared to platforms which are generic culture and specific tech. Like a tool like Facebook or Instagram will lock you into a certain way of doing things and impose, a generic culture on you. And so if you have a community today, you're split across Discord, you're split across Zoom, you're split across Facebook groups, you're split across Reddit, and they all enforce their little siloed pressures on you, with their own intentions and agendas. And Neighborhoods kind of flips that around and says, oh, you're a community, and so you should actually have these generic tools. Because when you think about it, things like Reddit and Instagram, they're quite generic in terms of the actual technology that they deliver. And so you could have little modular bits of technology that plug into a community. And so, a community activator community like this could potentially be its own neighborhood and not have to go to a Zoom or an Instagram or a Discord to have conversations. Dave, you had a question?
As you were talking, that triggered some thoughts, if you don't mind my sharing.
Yeah, please.
At this point. So in the introduction, I was talking about I've been involved in various homeschool communities for a while. But the thing that comes up in those is there's themes that spread out to kind of all aspects of our lives as well. So people who choose to homeschool, they're kind of self-selected out of a given system, which in turns oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes as a result of that decision, there's additional hardship or I don't know if that's the best word, but we'll phrase it like that for now. So there's often discussions around okay, how can I'm homeschooling my kids, so how can I also bring in some kind of income? There's lots of discussions around creative ways of doing that. There's a lot of discussion around self-care because there's some of these additional stresses. So people are talking about, well, you can do this to take care of yourself, or come on, let's have, like a mom's day out or something. There's all sorts of those discussions happening. And there's also discussions because many times people in this age group are taking care of their kids, and some part of that are sometimes also taking care of their parents as well, depending on where they are in their journey. So there's many other things, subjects that come out as well. So for example, I had a couple of friends nearby who just started a Facebook group, homesteading in, I'll leave the name off for right now, but homesteading in their community. They're suburban community. So you have like a 1/4 acre plot with your house on it. How do you start going about doing this sort of thing? So there's all these different topics that branch off of homeschooling and people starting to interact that way. And how do we support each other? And a lot of that is happening. And so I'm starting to try and think through, how can it be organized in a way to make it be more effective? So I started thinking about things like, we have a local community, maybe there's some sort of time banking we could do, or maybe there's some sort of mutual credit currency where we start doing things for each other. Now there's other topics of, if it's a really tight community, maybe you don't want to do time banking because there's already a really tight knit group. But if it's a loose knit group, maybe time banking would be something that would be really useful to kind of create those connections. For example, there's another Facebook group locally that I'm in. I'm blanking on the name, but it's a very hyper local gift economy. So people just post on there, hey, I have my kid's not using this basketball anymore. They put, who wants this? Guess a number between 1 and 10. The person who comes closest gets a basketball. It's just silly stuff like that. So it feels like I have this stew, all these sorts of ingredients in the stew. I'm not sure how it's all mixing around, but I'm not sure how it's going to come out organized and in the future. But I'm very excited to kind of play around with it and see how it can help my local community be more effective in creating relationships locally and just helping my local community become more resilient, I guess maybe is the best way to sum it up. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you for highlighting local, geographically localized communities, Dave, because I think that's one of the big parts of this. I mean, we can be localized geographically and or conceptually. We can have global communities that are extremely specific or very general. We can also have communities that are geographically very like just a local old-fashioned neighborhood or town or village. We can have the state, the province, the country, the whole globe too. So that's really, really important. Does anybody else at this time want to share any particular ideas about community activation or organizing? Any thoughts you started to have? Steve? There you are. Hi.
I mean, all of this stuff, I haven't looked at any of your specifications yet, but I mean, for instance, I think like 3 of my white papers, maybe even all of them, are just about exactly the type of applets or, genetic tools or whatever you want to call that would live in this environment. So
That's a great point, and I believe you put a link in the group chat. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. For example, my
should also
original
add-
one, my first little one was something called talk time, for example, which is just you're in an environment like this, you can just split up people's talk time, which then appears like it's a little life bar beneath them. But the main thing is that you can give each other talk time. So rather than just applauding each other, you can actually award each other talk time for like, hey, I like what you said, or hey, could you answer this question? Here's some talk time to answer it with, and so on and so forth. So that's like the least complicated one.
I think that's really cool. Jamie?
Yeah, so I was just thinking about Twitch Plays Pokemon. And for those unfamiliar, Twitch Plays Pokemon was an experiment done where everybody who wanted to participate would be able to just tap the key that they wanted the character on the screen to do on Twitch. So the live stream of a game, and it was being collectively played by a whole swath of people. And so for a long time, like I think something happened that they kind of reached an impasse, and eventually so it was all anarchy, and eventually the creator added an element of democracy, and so it would be all chaos in the anarchy setup. But if people wanted democracy, then they would push to vote for democracy, and then for a certain period of time, it would be the next moves would be democratically decided versus decided through just sheer chance of the next person who's clicking. Yes, anarchy is not to be confused with anarchism, of course.
I know.
Yeah, well, it's good to say it out loud. I think anyone listening ought not confuse the two. So I guess my question is, if a community activator wanted to integrate some form of chaos reign, or a chaos reign with a switch like that, could someone create a neighborhood that is also a game of King of the Hill, some kind of power dynamic play, some weird social experiment? Do any of those things sound impossible or unlikely, or are those the kinds of tools that we could build into it?
Oh,
I think
well.
Mariette had a hand up first.
Right.
Yeah, I like what.
Good.
So yeah, I like what you're saying there, Jamie. One of the things, although I'm heavily ensconced in the business world, in the traditional sense, the opportunity for creating a Hydroverse as a business tool, as a community, a neighborhood, and then allowing other neighborhoods to gamify that Hydroverse and create avatars. So then we allow grassroots organizations, mums and dads, people that are fascinated or interested in changing the world as far as energy consumption and generation is concerned, to collaborate with gamers. Like I think it was Zoe that was building games. If we could create a Hydroverse game where people, they don't get rewarded for shooting people or gaining tools, but for having an impact with hydrogen, water, carbon, growing trees, and then putting that through schools and getting young people involved. That's kind of one of the ideas that I wanted to explore with you guys too.
I think there's a bit of a pattern here of games and play and gamification being important. Mariette, I was hoping you wanted to talk, yeah?
Yeah. I just was going to wait because it's all really interesting. And once I start, I might not stop too quickly. So, in terms, for anyone who knows me, so in terms of anarchy versus anarchism, that's a really important piece for me, because hybrid anarchism would be the basis of all the decentralized governance and tools and teams that we're talking about. So if we're not clear on that, then we're not clear on actually what this does, right? So as long as we're clear on that, then I'm good with that. And then a certain amount of anarchy has to go into any game, because otherwise it's a forced set of controls. And that's my big problem with a lot of what people do design, is that we force parameters, and then every game, every tool is not a game. It's not enticing. It's not seductive. And if, you know, we're going to look at, let's say, permaculture and what makes people want to farm or be in, you know, in a culture that is actually like generative, right? Regenerative. It's that, like, you know, the bee is on the flower and you hear the bee and you smell the flower, and that's seductive. The idea that people operate from some sort of altruism or some greater, like whatever, is really highbrow. We operate primarily, or at least initially, from primal stimulus. So in that regard, when it comes to gamification, right, or any of these aspects, for me, there's also this one other piece, which is the joiner who doesn't join, or the joiner who moves, the nomad. So in 2016, I did author a book, which is really boring and super too long. So if you want it for free, let me know, but I do have it for sale somewhere. But it's super boring, and the back part about cryptocurrency is actually off. But the reality, it seems to be, if you follow the rules of cyberspace as they've been set out from like the 80s and 90s through a lot of like equally boring and much brighter MIT Press books, is that you have to allow for nature. So you have to allow for swarms. You have to allow for flash community. And whether that's used and activated through those hashtags or whatever, and then a person's reputation comes with them, and so that helps vet them into something, you know, etc. That to me is really important, because that's where the power of community can also become active. Of course, activist, but active. You know, so if it's a bunch of parents in you know, London, and then there's a bunch of parents somewhere like, you know, 100 miles away, but they have something that they could coalesce together in like a regional political or, you know, bioregional economic thing. Like your kids need, you know, I don't know, potatoes, and they don't have potatoes, but our kids here in the villages have potatoes. And since we're basically neighbors, we can now talk and get each other potatoes. Why something so boring? Well, if we are to ground the game in the infinite game, then the infinite game requires that we look at the biological game, and the biological game is kind of on fire. So, you know, addressing networks that are then viable, games that actually speak to the game of biologically restructuring resources so you can get them, is like the core aspect for me. And you know, again, I'm not a mom. I tend to move around. You know, most of my friends live in like, you know, Zoom or Twitter or Discord or wherever it is I find them. So, you know, in that sense, I wouldn't fit into a lot of your community groups. I would absolutely be an outlier. So how do I fit in? And how do kids who are 12 or 16 or 14 or 22, who might also have this feeling that their body is half in the internet, you know, how would they be drawn in? Because that's, you know, that's what my project works on, but that's like not what I'm here to talk about. Is what I'm, you know, what I'm cooking up. What I want to talk about is like, what's the matrix switching capability? How does this integrate with other, you know, projects? Sorry, Hilo started to come up because that's one I've been involved in. But like, how does this matrix switch? I want to know that that's baked in, and I want to know that it's baked in culturally, and I want to know that it's baked in on the back end. And it doesn't have to be baked in today, but like, I would highly recommend that to really now create something that's robust and dynamic. That's something that to me makes sense for the quantum leap that faces humanity right now. So sorry to soapbox, but that's just like, you know, these are the things that come up for me is, you know, how do we accept the fact that, you know, we're cyborgs living in a biological world, we want to play games, we have shorter attention spans, we don't fit into boxes, and we might need to like literally very quickly like feed, clothe, and like do ourselves. And, you know, I'm here for all of it. So thanks, you know.
thank you for your service to this community. And I'm very glad to know you, and I hope that you'll be part of Neighborhoods discussions in the future. Mariette's a great friend. Sid, you had your hand up. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I'm trying to riff off what Mariette said, not maybe respond. I think just riffing off her thoughts. It feels like talking about replang, or at least future conversations about replang, might be helpful. We've spoken about neighborhoods providing generic tools for communities, and a little bit about the marketplace. But a big piece of that that I didn't talk about, or we didn't talk about, was replang, which is a language that has a dual purpose. One, it allows communities to create and articulate culture on the fly. So one of the issues with distributed ledgers is, so much of it is just baked into stone or carved into stone, right? And so replang allows a community to say, this is our initial design for culture, but 5 hours later we might realize it doesn't work, and so you can actually reorchestrate and pop in a new template or re-articulate in a really easy, organic manner, and in a way which our adapters then pass those rules on to Holochain at the back end. And so you're not creating an app or a distributed community that's so hard coded that you don't have the ability to change it. And secondly, replang aids coherence across communities. Yes, baby. Do you want to say hi to everyone? Oh. So it aids. No, we just want to say hello from the sidelines. We don't actually want to talk. But replang allows and aids coherence across communities, and this is really critical because some of the examples you brought up, Mariette, like a community in one town, or like communities in different towns doing allied things, can start validating and cohering with each other. And this to me has always been the problem with anything communal. Or you have these large looming problems of let's say climate change, but the actual work to be done is local, and that tends to create friction because communities can only have an impact within their silo. So a shared language allows for that coherence across membranes, which means I could be part of a 50 people community, but if that 50 people community is validated by thousands across the, 1,000 other communities across the world, the scope of my impact widens. And so in like more academic terms, I think of it as like scaling of social capital. Like today, we've created these networks for scaling of monetary capital, but reputation and social capital takes often years to port. But through these kinds of language protocols, we could accelerate some of that. And to me, like this fits in with some of the conversations you brought up, Mariette, about like swarms. And so you could, then start seeing these organic little swarms where little ripple effects in minor localities could have their butterfly effect, like ripple effects in other communities, in which might be geographically separated, which might be just allied in terms of culture, but is still relevant. And so in my head, it's like a scaling of reputation capital in some way, but through a shared language, and not necessarily scaling in the way we've traditionally thought of it. But anyway, I just brought it up because I think replang, which is a core piece of the sense maker, like is something that's really important, and it's stuff that we will talk about more in the coming months, because we're now seeing Holochain go through a certain set of thresholds. I think some of you may have been following which is a native scaffolding that's being released on Holochain, and scaffoldings like that make neighborhoods so much more tangible, because like what we're talking about starts becoming much more visual, and the actual role of neighborhoods starts to crystallize as sense making or algorithm for the distributed world, as opposed to, and that's because like some of the scaffolding is emerging as pretty native. But yeah, I don't want to venture too much in that territory yet, but maybe in future conversations.
That is very important territory, but also very complex and challenging, and both in terms of technical design and culture and conversations between neighborhoods and other Holochain based projects, but super important. And I'm very glad you brought up um, we have about 15 minutes, and I want to point out two things. Number one, Alex asked in the chat a while ago, quote, do you have any thoughts on moderation? It seems to be a pain point in nearly any online community. And I agree super strongly. That's actually one of my key focal points in general. I'm trying to develop healthy boundaries and inclusive communities, and communities that are based more on guidelines than on strict rules, but which do have clear rules when necessary. And that's something that could be a great part of future conversations, I think. The other thing I wanted to mention, which said what you said brought it to mind, is that our teammate Pablo is prototyping a participatory design process for neighborhoods, including potentially a neighborhoods game, which would use the rep language, which would use the ontology, the terminology we're developing, and basically to make images of our using the prototype ontology, the key terms, including reactions and assessment types, and we can make physical or digital cards out of them to create a group game together. And I'm super excited that Pablo is working on this. This is fairly new. We'll have more on that soon, but I think that this participatory design process can be closely included in conversations about community activation, and can be combined with other participatory design ideas, like maybe something like a suggestion box for us, but more structured, which our team commits to respond to any submissions of issues or ideas, that sort of thing. So I wanted to bring those up, and I also would like to talk a little bit before we leave about next steps, like moving forward in developing neighborhoods, community, and culture. But there's probably at least another 5 minutes or more if people have other ideas that they'd like to share about communities they want to create, or if they already exist but just need better tools. Okay, well, as I've mentioned before, anybody that's on this call and everybody who listens to the recording too, please, you would be most welcome in our Discord server, as well as our other channels, including Twitter. And we have a channel on our Discord server called Community Activator, so that's an obvious place to participate. But I'll try to get you the Discord link in this chat window for convenience sake. I don't have it handy, but yeah, I really would love to see more people join it. Regarding, oh yes, Prosperous Passions. I'm not sure, hi, what your name
Hey,
is.
how you doing?
Hello.
My name's actually Sun, and Tom had invited me on. Thanks, Tom.
Cool.
So to answer your question, Greg, like let's say community and tools that I guess I'm looking for is around, I guess, like a group decision making and distribution of information. So in regards to forming something of like a local council, for example, and tools to do that, and to also with voting, kind of all of that sort of intertwined. Yeah, that's something that there is a group here on the Sunshine Coast, and there's actually two that at some point, once the tools are there, to start kind of bridging them, and within that there's then also overlays of things which are already, I think, something that can be easily built with neighborhoods, like food maps and distribution networks and those sorts of things. But yeah, one thing that I haven't seen yet, and maybe it's just my ignorance, is for like specifically voting and group decision making. I know Lumio is a great tool. I have tried to self-host that, and in conversations with I guess their developers, we got to a point where they were stuck and they didn't know, you know, what was going on there. So anyway, that's just my little input. Thank you.
All right, well, that's interesting and intriguing. I know some of the Lumio people pretty well because I used to be pretty close in the Inspiral community for a couple of years, and a lot of great folks. But yeah, that people can use Lumio for free or get a paid plan that's hosted, and of course you can self-host too, but that's a little trickier. I mean, that's part of the general challenging, and I think the general challenge in developing sustainable software development economics and more fairness and clarity in that economics. So that's part of what we're trying to do on Holochain, at least, but also to tie into other technology systems, whether they're blockchain or centralized. Would anybody else like to add anything in particular? Hi, Tom. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to share an invite there, Greg. Sorry, not an invite, an insight. And basically, I've seen lots of these community. I've been involved in lots of communities over the years and tried to get things going. But I just one pattern that I think Holochain solves, and is that the community always needs to interface with the real world, or the world that we've grown up in, and there always, at the end of the day, there needs to be somebody that pays that bill. And if it's a paid version of Lumio or something, or at the moment that that person who's paying that bill gets sort of disorientated or not quite happy with the way it all went or something, they stop paying the bill. And I just find that yeah, like even like I've spent $1,000 on Monday.com to set up a new community, and you get going, and then the 12 months goes by or 10 months go by, and then they want another $1,000, and you got to get that money from somewhere. But what I love about Holochain is from day one, there's none of that cost. Straight away, you're self-hosting real Holochain, and so the community, even if things like start to die down for a while, they can die down, but at least it all sits there. It's not costing $1,000 a month to run a voting system or whatever it ends up being. So it's not going to just be died and killed off. It can just sit there, and then when people get that, maybe that's just that time of year again, people get excited to have that activity. They can literally just pick up and keep going instead of every year or 2 years going around in circles trying to do the same thing. Anyway, that's what I've been experiencing. I think Holochain will stop me from doing that. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. We've got a little bit of time left. I do want to talk a little bit about how we can gather community activator ideas and how we can move forward. Let me get that out so that there will be some time for people to respond to that or to add anything else. I've got 4 ideas on how to gather community activator ideas myself. Number 1, certainly our Discord server, which I've mentioned, which has a community activators channel. And in terms of making that maybe a little more structured in the future, we could suggest a format for people to, this would be a really lightweight way to create easy to use structure, just to suggest a tag for people to use when they submit something to that channel, like hashtag CA idea or something such. Because of the way Discord works, it's pretty easy to actually search for hashtags like that. It wouldn't be well organized, but you could search and find everything anybody put in, and that would be super easy, lightweight, and informal. I think that could be super useful. In terms of doing something more formal, certainly we could use forums and spreadsheets. We could develop a running survey, which people could use a resubmittable form for to submit ideas, and that form and the spreadsheet could be super simple. They could also be too complex, really. It'd be very easy to make them too complex, I think. But I'm very interested in talking to people if they are intrigued by that idea, because I think it would be really important to make it very easy to use and to update your whatever you submit in the future. I already mentioned the participatory design process that Pablo is prototyping, and the idea of this neighborhoods game that I think is awesome. And I think the community activator community can be very involved in that. And the other thing, of course, is further community activator salon meetings, because I'm hoping to do this certainly on a monthly basis, if feasible. Also, I mentioned time zones before. Ideally, I would like to probably have 2 different time slots, one of which is very accessible to Europe and Africa, and one of which is relatively accessible to Eastern Asia and Australasia, and everybody else kind of fits in if you include those with the right setup. So, in fact, we could even have a monthly meeting, 2 monthly meetings, one for each of those time zones, if there's sufficient interest, you know, and that might require a little more surveying of interest, but I think there is enough interest there, because I know there are Europeans that would have liked to have been here today. So that's my thoughts on that. And so if anybody has any feedback on that and other ideas on how to, you know, gather community activator ideas, or anything else that we've talked about today, please don't be shy.
It wasn't very diplomatic.
That's good.
Jumped right in. So maybe dancing with the devil and having like a group on Facebook and a channel on Instagram, just to say this is a place to put forward your ideas potentially. There's, I mean, lots of people are interacting on those sites. Fewer so, of course, on Discord. If we are, like, in terms of where community activators are spending time, if I think about just my region and the people that I know, they are definitely kind of showing up in those places. And I guess with the right keywording, Facebook may just, like, you know, present that group to them. If there is some kind of budget, then you could sort of pay a little bit to get in front of their faces, or just network, just kind of as you're engaging with people, you know, start to spread the message of the group and kind of get them to pass it on.
I'm glad you brought up the idea of Facebook and Instagram, because yeah, those are huge communities, and we have a Facebook page. We don't use it often though. We do not have a Facebook group, Sid, I don't think.
Just the page, yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty common for a lot of companies, but yeah, I mean, we could have a public or a private group, and that's something I have a lot of experience with, and I'm also pretty ambivalent about. It's something that I think you need to pay close attention to and develop properly to create a pretty decent signal to noise ratio, and, you know, to have healthy boundaries, etc. But if other people are interested in that, I really want to know, and that is something that could definitely happen.
Say, this is Steve. I just want to break you through something topical. Regarding if you had all your Facebook data where it could be exported into neighborhoods, is that a useful thing? Would you have a use for that? And are you considering that use case at all?
I am. And I bet, Sid, it's probably crossed your mind and other people's too, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it definitely has. I would say it's part of the roadmap, like creating those kind of bridges. I will say it's like in my head, like personally, I think there might be people who pick it up and roll it out much sooner. I think it might be like phase 2 or, you know, subsequent phases. And the reason in my head is Holochain is agent centric. And so, to put it very crudely, when technology is agent centric, you know exactly who you received likes or claps or upvotes from. And I think that adds a dimension to sense making or reputation data. So if you come to me and say you've got 10,000 Instagram likes, that's not as valuable as you've got 50 likes from people that I deeply appreciate. So that dimensionality of Holochain, I think, is the game changer, in my opinion.
That's the answer I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I
So
think that data
in my
mostly
head,
is garbage
in
data.
my head,
Okay,
yes,
great.
we enable people to build those bridges, but personally, I'm excited about this agent-centric dimension. Like that's going to be the real action and real fun. That's where things will move. Sorry. Somebody had their hand up.
Oh yeah,
I'm
that was
sorry.
me.
Go, yes, please.
So just in response to that, I empathize. I feel the same in regards to, you know, like the likes or the social relationships that we have. But in one potential use case for like so what I might be interested in, I mean, one is, I guess, Facebook. I hadn't used it for like the last 2 years, but it still knows some stuff about me. Like what information it has, what are those metrics, and like, you know, conditions and things. And then I'd potentially be happy to, depending on the, you know, where Holochain goes and what sort of use cases it comes up with in the next, you know, couple of years, then that data is, I believe, would be valuable to businesses wanting to present their products to me. And so they can kind of take a gamble and have access to my information for a fee. And then at some point when the algorithm deems it relevant, it's going to present, you know, their product to me. So that might be like in the same way that Facebook, basically where Facebook's making money on our data, as a user, I'm the one that holds my data in the Holochain realm, and I'm happy to allow people to bid on that in order to present their offers to me. So Andy, that's just my thought there around what I might use that data for.
I think that's a potentially excellent conversation topic. There's so many different things that will be enabled by decentralized technology. And by the way, I'm personally very interested in creating bridges for progressive decentralization, which links neighborhoods and other holochain technology stacks to blockchains and to centralized systems, including these big social media platforms, so that everybody can move forward together. We are like about 2 minutes over time. Thanks so much to everybody for sticking around for that. And if anybody's ready to leave, probably most of us are just about ready to. So if anybody wants to add some closing thoughts or say goodbye, now's a great time to do that. Thank you for being here, Anita, Tom, Luciana, Marietta, Sissy, Jamie, Dave, Zoe, Alex. Yeah, so good to see y'all.
Of course, Greg.
And we'll be in touch, yeah, and be in touch with us. Make sure you have our website at least, Discord, etc. Thanks for your presence.
Oh, nice. Thanks, Tom.
All right.
All right.
I'll stay here for about 30 seconds, maybe. Thank you, Tom. All right, I guess that's about it. See you later.